You know that feeling when you think you know everything that's in your bag? Like, you've had the same backpack for months, maybe years, and you could probably list every single item in there with your eyes closed. The crumpled receipts in the front pocket, that pen that's been slowly leaking ink, the granola bar you keep forgetting to eat, your wallet, your keys, maybe some headphones tangled into an impossible knot. It's all so familiar, so predictable, so utterly boring. That's exactly how I felt about my bag too, right up until the moment I reached inside and touched something that absolutely, positively should not have been there. Something cold. Something smooth. Something that made every hair on the back of my neck stand straight up like soldiers at attention. And that's when my entire life went from mundane and predictable to absolutely insane in the span of about 3 seconds. Let me back up a little bit and give you some context here, because this story, this absolutely wild and unbelievable story, it needs context. My name's Jake, I'm 26 years old, and I work as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm in downtown Chicago. Nothing fancy, nothing glamorous, just a regular guy with a regular job, living a regular life in a regular apartment with my regular cat named Mr. Whiskers. Yes, I named my cat Mr. Whiskers, and no, I'm not embarrassed about it. He's orange, he's fluffy, and he's got whiskers for days, so the name fits perfectly, thank you very much. My life, up until that Tuesday morning in October, was so predictable you could set your watch by it. Wake up at 7, hit snooze twice, stumble to the shower, make coffee that's way too strong, grab my bag, and head out the door to catch the Red Line train downtown. Same routine, every single day, 5 days a week, with occasional variations on the weekend that usually involved sleeping in and ordering too much takeout. That particular Tuesday started off completely normal. Actually, scratch that. It started off worse than normal because I'd stayed up way too late binge-watching some true crime documentary about a guy who disappeared in the woods, and let me tell you, when you watch that kind of stuff right before bed, your brain doesn't exactly shut off and give you peaceful dreams. I'd woken up groggy, with that heavy feeling behind my eyes that tells you caffeine is going to be your best friend for the next few hours. Mr. Whiskers had been particularly demanding that morning too, meowing at me like I'd personally offended him by not refilling his food bowl at exactly 6:30 a.m. like he preferred. Cats, man. They run your life and they know it. I'd grabbed my usual breakfast, which consisted of a protein bar that tasted vaguely like chocolate and disappointment, chugged my coffee like it was a competitive sport, and headed out into the crisp October air. Chicago in October is beautiful, I'll give it that. The leaves were turning all these incredible shades of orange and red and gold, and there was this perfect chill in the air that made you want to wear a hoodie but not quite a full jacket yet. The kind of weather where you feel alive, you know? Where every breath feels fresh and clean and full of possibility. Little did I know just how much possibility that day was actually holding. The train ride was its usual chaos. Packed with commuters, everyone standing shoulder to shoulder, trying to maintain that perfect Chicago public transit etiquette of pretending nobody else exists while being pressed up against 15 strangers. I'd managed to snag a spot near the door, wedged between a woman reading a romance novel with an incredibly questionable cover and a guy who smelled strongly of cologne and regret. My bag was pressed against my chest, which was pretty much standard procedure on a crowded train because, you know, pickpockets and general city paranoia. I wasn't thinking about what was inside my bag. I was thinking about the project I had due that afternoon, mentally running through all the design elements I still needed to tweak, wondering if my boss Sarah was going to love it or tell me to start over for the 3rd time that week. I got off at my usual stop, walked the 3 blocks to my office building, nodded at Marcus the security guard who'd been working there longer than I'd been alive probably, and took the elevator up to the 5th floor. Our office was your typical open-concept creative space with exposed brick walls, those industrial-looking light fixtures that cost way too much money, and desks arranged in little clusters that were supposed to encourage collaboration but mostly just meant everyone could hear everyone else's phone conversations and typing. My desk was in the back corner, which I actually loved because it meant I could see everyone but I had a wall behind me, and something about that just made me feel more secure, less exposed. I dropped my bag on the floor next to my desk, booted up my computer, and got straight to work. Or at least, I tried to get straight to work. But something was bothering me, nagging at the back of my mind like an itch I couldn't quite reach. It was this feeling, you know, that sense that something isn't quite right but you can't put your finger on what it is. Have you ever had that? Where your subconscious is trying to tell you something, but your conscious brain is too busy or too distracted to listen. It's like when you know you've forgotten something important but you can't remember what, and it just sits there in your brain, this uncomfortable weight, this persistent little voice saying, pay attention, something's wrong. I tried to ignore it. I pulled up my design files, started adjusting colors and fonts, moved some elements around, but I couldn't focus. My eyes kept drifting to my bag, which was just sitting there innocently on the floor next to my desk, looking completely normal and non-threatening. Just a regular black backpack, a little worn around the edges, with a few pins I'd collected over the years stuck to the front. A pizza slice pin, a little enamel cat, a geometric design I'd made myself. Nothing special, nothing unusual. But that feeling wouldn't go away. If anything, it was getting stronger, more insistent, like my brain was screaming at me to check my bag, even though I couldn't think of any logical reason why I would need to. Finally, around 10:30 in the morning, after I'd reread the same paragraph of feedback from a client about 7 times without actually processing any of it, I gave in. I reached down, grabbed my bag, and set it on my lap. The weight felt normal. Nothing seemed off about it from the outside. I unzipped the main compartment, and that's when things got weird. That's when my nice, normal, boring Tuesday morning took a hard left turn into absolutely bizarre territory. The first thing I noticed was that everything in my bag seemed slightly rearranged. Not dramatically, not like someone had dumped it all out and stuffed it back in, but just subtly different from how I usually organize things. My sketchbook, which I always kept on the left side, was on the right. My pencil case was at the bottom instead of the top. Little things like that, things that most people probably wouldn't even notice, but I'm kind of particular about how I organize my stuff, probably because I'm a designer and organization is kind of built into my personality at this point. I started pulling things out, setting them on my desk one by one. Sketchbook, pencil case, a folder full of project notes, my tablet, chargers and cables wrapped with Velcro ties, a pack of gum that was down to its last 2 pieces. Everything normal, everything accounted for. But that feeling was still there, even stronger now, telling me to keep looking, keep searching, something's in there that shouldn't be. And then I saw it. Or rather, I felt it. My hand brushed against something at the very bottom of my bag, underneath everything else, pressed into the corner like it was trying to hide. Something smooth and cold and definitely, absolutely not something I had put in there myself. My heart did this weird little skip thing, like it stumbled on its own beat, and for a second I just froze with my hand inside my bag, fingers touching this mysterious object, brain trying to process what was happening. Slowly, very slowly, I wrapped my fingers around it and pulled it out. And let me tell you, when I saw what it was, when I actually got a good look at this thing that had somehow ended up in my bag without my knowledge or permission, my mind went completely blank. Not blank in a peaceful, meditative way, but blank in a what the actual hell is happening right now kind of way. It was a device. That's the only way I can describe it. A device unlike anything I'd ever seen before. About the size of a large smartphone, maybe a little thicker, with a smooth black surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible seams, no buttons, no ports, no markings whatsoever. Just this perfect, seamless rectangle of darkness that felt cold in my hand despite having been in my bag pressed against my body heat for who knows how long. The material was strange too. It didn't feel like plastic or metal or glass. It felt like something else entirely, something I couldn't identify, something that made my skin prickle with unease. I sat there at my desk, holding this impossible object in both hands, staring at it like it might suddenly spring to life or explain itself. My coworkers were moving around the office behind me, talking and laughing and living their normal lives, completely oblivious to the fact that I was having what you might call a significant personal crisis. Because here's the thing, here's what was running through my mind at that exact moment. I had no idea where this came from. None. Zero. I couldn't remember anyone putting anything in my bag. I couldn't remember leaving my bag unattended anywhere suspicious. I couldn't remember anything unusual happening recently that might explain how this thing ended up in my possession. I tried to think back over the past few days, retracing my steps like a detective in one of those crime shows. Sunday I'd been home all day, working on some freelance stuff and binge-watching that documentary I mentioned. Monday I'd gone to work, stopped at the grocery store on the way home, picked up some Thai food for dinner. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. My bag had been with me the entire time, or at least, I thought it had been. Had there been a moment, even a brief one, where someone could have slipped something inside without me noticing? Had I left it in the break room at work? Had I set it down at the grocery store or the restaurant? The more I thought about it, the more paranoid I became. Because the truth was, we don't pay attention to our belongings every single second of every single day. We get comfortable, we get complacent, we assume our stuff is safe because we're in familiar environments around people we trust. But that assumption, that comfort, it creates opportunities for things like this to happen. For mysterious objects to appear in our bags. For our normal, safe lives to suddenly become very not normal and very not safe. I turned the device over in my hands, examining it from every angle, looking for any clue about what it was or where it came from. The black surface was completely uniform, completely featureless. It was like holding a piece of void, a rectangular absence of information. I pressed on it gently, seeing if maybe there was a hidden button or a pressure-sensitive panel. Nothing. I held it up to the light, looking for seams or scratches or manufacturing marks. Nothing. I even, and I'm not proud of this, tried smelling it to see if there was any distinctive odor that might give me a hint about its composition. It smelled like nothing. Literally nothing. Most things smell like something, even if it's just a faint plastic smell or a metallic tang, but this thing had no odor whatsoever. The rational part of my brain, the part that didn't watch too many conspiracy theory videos on YouTube at 2 in the morning, was trying to come up with logical explanations. Maybe it was a promotional item from some tech company. Maybe a coworker was playing a prank. Maybe I'd been drunk at some point in the recent past, which, okay, that hadn't happened, but maybe I'd been really tired and bought something online I didn't remember. Maybe it was one of those smartphone cases that were so minimalist they looked like solid blocks. Maybe. But the other part of my brain, the part that had been mainlining true crime and mystery content for the past few months, was screaming warnings at me. This was weird. This was really, really weird. Strange objects don't just appear in your personal belongings. And when they do, it usually means something very bad is happening or is about to happen. It means you're being targeted somehow, tracked somehow, caught up in something you don't understand. My imagination started running wild with possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. Was it a tracking device? Was someone following me? Was I being monitored? Was this some kind of spy tech? Government surveillance? Corporate espionage? Criminal activity? Or, and this thought made my stomach drop, was it dangerous? Was it a bomb? Could this sleek black rectangle that felt so harmless in my hands actually be something that could hurt me or the people around me? I looked around the office suddenly, very aware of how many people were nearby, how many innocent coworkers were sitting at their desks working on their designs and sipping their coffee, completely unaware that I might be holding something dangerous. My hand started to shake slightly, and I very carefully, very gently, set the device down on my desk, treating it like it was made of nitroglycerin. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do. The responsible thing, the sensible thing, would be to report this immediately. Tell someone. Tell security, tell the police, tell someone who knew about these things and could handle it properly. But I hesitated, because what would I even say? Hi, I found a weird black rectangle in my bag that I've never seen before, and I have no idea what it is or how it got there. Please help. They'd probably think I was crazy. They'd probably think I was making it up or being paranoid or had accidentally grabbed someone else's bag at some point and this was just a misunderstanding. But as I sat there looking at this thing on my desk, that cold black surface seeming to swallow the fluorescent office light around it, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't just throw it away or pretend I never found it. Because ignoring problems doesn't make them go away, it just makes them grow bigger and scarier in the dark until they explode in your face when you least expect it. And whatever this was, whoever had put it in my bag, they knew where I was. They knew my routines. They had access to my personal belongings. That thought alone was enough to make my skin crawl. I picked up my phone and stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen. Who do you call in a situation like this? 911 seemed excessive. It's not like there was an active emergency happening right this second. But the non-emergency police line? Was this something the police would even care about? Would they laugh at me? Would they tell me I was wasting their time? Would they actually help? My coworker Lisa walked by at that moment, carrying a coffee mug that said "Understood." "Understood," I repeated, though honestly nothing about this situation made any sense to me at all. She stood up, and I stood up with her, my legs feeling shaky and uncertain. "One more thing, Mr. Coleman. Until we figure out what's going on, you should vary your routine. Don't take the same route to work every day. Don't go to the same places at the same times. Be aware of your surroundings. If someone wanted to plant that device on you once, they might try again." That thought hadn't even occurred to me, and it made everything 10 times worse. Someone out there, someone I didn't know, had deliberately chosen me for something. Had accessed my personal belongings. Had involved me in something dangerous enough to evacuate an entire police station. And they might do it again. I took an Uber home because I couldn't face getting back on the train, couldn't face being in a crowded space with strangers pressing up against me, any one of whom could be the person who'd done this. The driver tried to make small talk, but I must have looked so shell-shocked that he gave up after a few attempts and just drove in silence, occasionally glancing at me in the rearview mirror with concern. When we pulled up to my apartment building, I saw exactly what Detective Morrison had promised. An unmarked police car was parked across the street, and I could see 2 officers inside, watching. It should have made me feel safe, but instead it just made everything feel more real, more serious, more terrifying. This wasn't going away. This wasn't just going to blow over. My life had fundamentally changed in the span of a few hours, and I had no idea when or if it would ever go back to normal. I trudged up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, my legs feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. Mr. Whiskers was waiting by the door when I opened it, meowing indignantly about being left alone all day, completely oblivious to the fact that his human had just had the worst day of his entire life. I picked him up and buried my face in his orange fur, and he tolerated it for about 10 seconds before squirming away and heading to his food bowl to remind me of my duties as his servant. I fed him, then collapsed on my couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened. My phone had been buzzing periodically in my pocket during the Uber ride, and I finally pulled it out to look at it. 17 missed calls from work. 23 text messages. 6 voicemails. Most of them were from Lisa, asking where I was, if I was okay, saying that Sarah was looking for me. The last one, sent about an hour ago, just said, "Jake, there are news vans outside our building and they're asking about you. What the hell is going on?" I didn't respond. I couldn't respond. What would I even say? "Hey Lisa, remember that weird thing in my bag?" "Yeah. Turns out it's so serious that the police evacuated their entire station, and now I'm a person of interest in some kind of investigation that I don't understand. Also, there are cops watching my apartment, and I'm not allowed to leave the city. How's your day going?" I turned on my TV and flipped to a local news station, and sure enough, there it was. Breaking news. Police investigation at downtown precinct. Hazmat teams called in. Building evacuated. Unidentified device found. Person of interest being questioned. They didn't show my face, thank God, but they had footage of the police station, of the crowds, of all the emergency vehicles. The reporter was speculating about terrorism, about foreign agents, about all sorts of dramatic possibilities, and I sat there watching it all feeling completely surreal and disconnected from reality. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but then I remembered Detective Morrison's instructions about reporting anything unusual, and an unknown number calling me right after all this seemed potentially significant. I answered cautiously. "Hello. Jake Coleman." The voice was male, middle-aged, professional-sounding. "Who's asking?" "My name is David Brennan. I'm an attorney specializing in federal criminal defense. I've been following the news about the incident at the police station today, and I believe you might need legal representation." "How did you get this number?" "That's not important right now. What's important is that you're in a serious situation and you shouldn't speak to anyone, especially not law enforcement, without proper legal counsel." I should have hung up immediately. This was exactly the kind of thing Detective Morrison had warned me about. But I was scared and confused, and the idea of having someone who knew what they were doing on my side was incredibly appealing. "I don't even know if I can afford a lawyer. We can discuss payment arrangements. But Jake, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't say anything else to the police until you have representation. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to any searches without a warrant. These people are trying to build a case, and everything you say can and will be used against you." "But I didn't do anything wrong." I'm the victim here. That may be true, but the justice system doesn't always see things clearly. You need protection. You need someone who can make sure your rights are respected. He paused, letting that sink in. I can be at your apartment in 30 minutes. We can discuss your situation and figure out the best path forward. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was wrong, that this was suspicious, that legitimate attorneys don't just call random people and offer their services. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. But don't think too long. Time is critical in situations like these. I'll call you back in an hour. He hung up before I could respond. I immediately called Detective Morrison. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Coleman. Is everything all right? I just got a call from a lawyer I've never heard of. He knew my name and knew about what happened today and wanted to represent me. He said he'd be at my apartment in 30 minutes. There was a pause, and I could hear her typing something. What was his name? David Brennan. He said he specializes in federal criminal defense. More typing. There is a David Brennan who practices in Chicago, but he's a corporate attorney, not criminal defense. Mr. Coleman, did you give this person your address? No, but he said he could be here, so he must already know where I live. Listen to me very carefully. Do not let anyone into your apartment. Do not open your door for anyone except the officers we've assigned to watch your building, and even then, verify their credentials through the peephole before opening. I'm sending additional units to your location right now. If anyone tries to contact you again, do not engage with them. Just call me immediately. Do you understand? Yes, I said, feeling my anxiety spike even higher than it already was. But what does this mean? Why would someone pretend to be a lawyer? We don't know yet. But it suggests that whoever planted that device on you is very interested in what happens next. They may be trying to influence your actions or get information about the investigation. Stay inside. Stay alert. We'll have people there within 5 minutes. She hung up, and I stood there in my living room, phone in hand, feeling like the walls were closing in. I went to my windows and looked out, checking the street below. The unmarked police car was still there. People were walking by, going about their normal evening routines, completely unaware that someone in one of these buildings was caught up in something dangerous and strange. I closed the blinds, suddenly very aware of how exposed I was, how vulnerable. If someone could plant something in my bag without me noticing, what else could they do? Could they get into my apartment? Were they watching me right now? I checked every lock on every window and door, making sure everything was secure. I pushed my couch in front of the door for extra measure, which Mr. Whiskers found very interesting and immediately claimed as his new favorite spot. I sat on my bed with my phone in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. 24 hours ago I'd been a normal guy with a normal life, and now I was barricaded in my apartment, armed with cutlery, waiting for... What? What was I even waiting for? My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Jake, seriously, are you okay? The news is saying someone brought a device to the police station, and I'm really hoping that wasn't you, but I have a bad feeling it was. Please just let me know you're alive. I texted back. I'm fine. Can't talk about it right now. I'll explain when I can. The news people are gone, but Sarah is pissed. She's been calling you all day. You might want to at least let her know you're not dead. I called Sarah, my boss, figuring that was probably the responsible thing to do. She answered immediately, her voice sharp with worry and anger. Jake, where the hell have you been? What is going on? There were reporters at our office asking about you. Sarah, I'm sorry. I can't really explain right now. Something happened and I'm dealing with it. I'll be back to work as soon as I can. Something happened. Jake, there are rumors that you brought some kind of weapon or bomb to the police station. Please tell me that's not true. It's not true. Not exactly. I found something and I reported it. That's all I can say right now. Found something where? In my bag. Sarah, I really can't talk about this. The police told me not to discuss it. There was a long silence. Are you in trouble? Do you need help? Should the company get you a lawyer? I don't know yet. Maybe. I'm still figuring it all out. Jake, listen to me. You're a good employee. You're a good person. Whatever this is, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. But you need to be smart about this. Get a lawyer. A real one, from a reputable firm. Don't try to handle this alone. I know. I will. Thank you, Sarah. Take tomorrow off. Take the rest of the week if you need to. Just keep me updated, okay? And Jake, be careful. I promised I would be, and hung up. Mr. Whiskers had abandoned the couch barricade and was now weaving between my legs, sensing my distress and doing that thing cats do where they pretend they're being affectionate but really they just want attention. I picked him up again and sat down on my bed, and this time he stayed in my lap, purring loudly, his warm weight somehow making me feel slightly less alone. There was a knock on my door, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mr. Coleman, this is Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chen. Detective Morrison sent us. Can we speak with you? I went to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw 2 uniformed officers holding up their badges. I moved the couch out of the way with significant effort and multiple complaints from Mr. Whiskers, and opened the door with the chain still attached. Can I see those badges closer? They held them up to the crack in the door, and I examined them as carefully as I could, though honestly I had no idea what a fake badge would look like versus a real one. They looked official enough. I unlatched the chain and let them in. Officer Rodriguez was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, and Officer Chen was a shorter Asian man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. They both looked around my small apartment, taking in the couch that was obviously recently moved, the kitchen knife still sitting on my bed, my general state of panicked disarray. Detective Morrison filled us in on the phone call you received, Officer Rodriguez said. We're going to be stationed outside your building for the rest of the night. We've also alerted the officers across the street to be on high alert for anyone approaching the building who matches the description you gave of the man on the phone. I didn't give a description. It was just a voice. Male, middle-aged, professional sounding. That's something. Detective Morrison is also running traces on the number that called you. We should have more information soon. She gestured to the windows. Keep your blinds closed. Don't answer the door for anyone except uniformed officers, and always verify credentials first. If you hear anything unusual, anything at all, call this number immediately. She handed me another card, this one with a direct line to dispatch. How long is this going to go on? I asked, hearing the exhaustion in my own voice. Until we figure out what's happening and neutralize any threat. Could be a day, could be a week. We don't know yet. Officer Chen's voice was gentle, sympathetic. I know this is scary, Mr. Coleman, but you're doing everything right. You reported something suspicious, you cooperated with law enforcement, you're following instructions. That's all you can do right now. They left after checking all my windows and doors themselves, making sure everything was secure, and I was alone again except for Mr. Whiskers. I tried to eat something, but my stomach was in knots. I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to work on some designs on my laptop, but my hands were shaking too much to use the mouse properly. Finally, around midnight, exhaustion won out over anxiety and I fell asleep fully clothed on top of my covers, with my phone clutched in one hand and Mr. Whiskers curled up against my chest. I woke up to sunlight streaming through the cracks in my blinds and the sound of my phone ringing. I grabbed it, still half asleep, and saw Detective Morrison's name on the screen. Hello. Mr. Coleman, I need you to come to the station this morning for that interview we discussed. Can you be here by 9? I looked at the clock. It was 7:30. Yes, I can do that. Good. The officers outside will escort you. Don't take any personal items except your phone and your ID. Don't bring a bag. Don't bring anything that someone could have tampered with. That woke me up fully. You think someone might have planted more things on me? We're being cautious. 9 a.m., Mr. Coleman. Don't be late. The line went dead. I dragged myself out of bed, fed Mr. Whiskers, took the fastest shower of my life, and got dressed in clean clothes, paranoid the entire time that somehow someone had broken in and planted something in my closet or my dresser or my shoes. I checked every pocket, every fold of fabric, every item I put on my body. Nothing seemed out of place, but then again, I hadn't noticed anything wrong yesterday either until I found that device. Officers Rodriguez and Chen were waiting for me outside my building, standing next to a marked patrol car. Mr. Coleman. Ready to go. I nodded, and they drove me to the station, not the same one from yesterday but a different facility, more modern-looking, more secure. They led me through a maze of hallways to a small interview room with a metal table, 3 chairs, a camera mounted in the corner, and absolutely nothing else. The walls were a depressing beige color and there were no windows. It felt exactly like every interrogation room I'd ever seen on TV, which did not make me feel better about anything. Detective Morrison will be with you shortly. Can we get you anything? Water? Coffee? Water would be good. Thanks. They left, and I sat there alone with my thoughts, which was possibly the worst thing because my thoughts were currently a chaotic mess of fear and confusion and increasingly paranoid theories about what was happening. Was I being set up? Was someone using me as a patsy for something bigger? Was this about terrorism like the news had speculated? Was it corporate espionage? Government conspiracy? Aliens? Okay, probably not aliens, but at this point I wasn't ruling anything out. Detective Morrison came in carrying a folder and a laptop, followed by a man I didn't recognize. He was probably in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of face that had seen too much but was still trying to find the good in people. Detective Morrison made introductions. Mr. Coleman, this is FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb. Given the nature of the device you found, this case has been escalated to federal jurisdiction. FBI. The FBI was involved. This was so much worse than I'd thought. Am I under arrest? No, Agent Webb said, his voice surprisingly warm despite the circumstances. You're here voluntarily to help us understand what happened. You're not under arrest, you're not being charged with anything, and you're free to leave at any time. However, we do need your cooperation to figure out who's targeting you and why. Targeting me? You think I'm being targeted specifically? They exchanged a look, and Detective Morrison opened her folder. Mr. Coleman, I'm going to show you something, and I need you to tell me if you recognize it. She pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. It was a close-up of the device I'd found, that smooth black rectangle, but in this photo it was labeled with various markers and annotations. That's it. That's what I found in my bag. Have you ever seen anything like this before? In movies, in video games, in any media or real-life context. I studied the photo carefully, really looked at it. No. I've never seen anything like it. That's why I was so freaked out. It doesn't look like anything that should exist. Agent Webb leaned forward. That's because it doesn't exist. Not in any commercial capacity. Not in any civilian capacity. Not in any legal capacity. He paused, letting that sink in. Mr. Coleman, the device you found is a prototype. A highly classified prototype that was reported stolen from a secure government facility 3 weeks ago. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What? It's part of an experimental program that I can't give you details about for national security reasons. What I can tell you is that it shouldn't exist outside of a very small circle of people with very high security clearances. The fact that it ended up in your backpack is extremely concerning. But why me? I'm nobody. I'm a graphic designer. I don't have access to classified anything. I don't work for the government. I don't know anyone who works for the government. I barely know anyone who works for anyone important. Detective Morrison pulled out more papers from her folder. We've been looking into your background, Mr. Coleman. And you're right, you're exactly what you say you are. A regular person with a regular job and a regular life. No criminal record, no connections to any radical organizations or foreign entities, no indicators that you'd be involved in anything like this. Which raises the question of why someone would choose you as a recipient for stolen government property. Maybe they grabbed the wrong person's bag? Maybe it was supposed to go to someone else. Agent Webb shook his head. We don't think so. Your bag wasn't left unattended in any public place where someone could have easily grabbed the wrong one. Whoever planted this on you did it deliberately, carefully, specifically to you. Then I have no idea why. None. I can't think of any reason why anyone would target me for anything. They asked me more questions. Walked me through my entire life, from childhood to present day, looking for any connection, any anomaly, any clue that might explain why I'd been chosen. My education, State University, nothing special. My work history, 3 jobs since graduating, all in design, all perfectly ordinary. My relationships, nothing dramatic, no scorned ex-lovers seeking revenge. My hobbies, video games, reading, occasionally going to museums, watching Mr. Whiskers do cat things. My finances, stable, boring, no massive debts or unexpected windfalls. My online presence, minimal, mostly just pictures of my cat like I'd told Detective Morrison. We went in circles for what felt like hours, and the whole time I could feel their frustration growing as they realized I genuinely had no answers for them. I was a dead end. A complete mystery. An inexplicable choice that made no sense from any angle. Finally, Agent Webb sat back in his chair and rubbed his face tiredly. "Mr. Coleman, I'm going to be honest with you. We're dealing with a serious situation here. This device that was planted on you, if it had ended up in the wrong hands, if you tried to use it or sell it or give it to anyone else, the consequences would have been catastrophic. We're talking about potential threats to national security. We're talking about technology that could be weaponized or reverse-engineered or used for purposes that I can't even discuss with you. But I didn't do any of that. I brought it straight to you. And that's the only reason you're sitting here having a conversation instead of being detained as a suspect. But someone out there, someone with access to classified government property and the knowledge to steal it, chose you for something. And until we figure out what that something is, you're in danger. They might try again. They might try something different. They might decide you're a liability that needs to be eliminated." The way he said eliminated made my blood run cold. So what do I do? Do I just hide in my apartment forever? Do I go into witness protection? Do I leave the country? You can't leave the country. You're a material witness in an ongoing federal investigation. What we can offer you is enhanced protection. We can have agents with you at all times. We can relocate you temporarily to a secure location if necessary. We can monitor all your communications and your movements to try to identify who's behind this. That sounds like prison. It sounds like survival, Detective Morrison said, not unkindly. Someone went to enormous effort to get that device into your possession. We need to figure out why before they make their next move, whatever that might be. There was a knock on the door, and a young officer poked his head in. "Agent Webb, we've got something on the phone trace." They excused themselves, leaving me alone in the interview room with my racing thoughts and growing sense of dread. I'd done the right thing, hadn't I? I'd found something suspicious and reported it immediately. I'd cooperated fully with law enforcement. I'd followed every instruction. And somehow I was still the one sitting in an interrogation room, being told my life was in danger, being offered protective custody like I was a mob informant instead of just a regular guy who'd had the bad luck to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or was it luck? That's what kept nagging at me. Agent Webb had said it wasn't a mistake, that I'd been chosen deliberately. But why? What did I have that someone wanted? What could I possibly offer to someone capable of stealing classified government technology? They came back about 15 minutes later, and something had changed. They both looked tense, alert, like they'd just received information that had shifted their entire understanding of the situation. Agent Webb sat down heavily. "Mr. Coleman, we need to ask you about your father." "My father? What does he have to do with anything? He's been dead for 6 years. We know. Thomas Coleman died in 2019 of a heart attack at age 58. But before he died, what did he do for a living? He was an engineer. He worked for various tech companies over the years. Why?" Detective Morrison pulled out yet another folder, this one significantly thicker. "According to our records, your father worked for Meridian Defense Systems from 2005 to 2015. Does that sound correct?" I thought back, trying to remember. My dad had worked for so many different companies over the years, and he'd never talked much about his work. "Maybe. I think so." He never really discussed his jobs with me. He said most of his work was proprietary and he couldn't talk about it. Agent Webb and Detective Morrison exchanged another one of those looks, and I was really starting to hate those looks. "Mr. Coleman, Meridian Defense Systems is a government contractor. They develop classified technology for the Department of Defense. Your father would have had a high-level security clearance. My mouth went dry. He never told me that. He never told me he worked on anything classified. He wouldn't have been able to. Part of having that clearance means you don't discuss your work with anyone who doesn't have the same level of clearance, including family. Agent Webb leaned forward. Did your father leave you anything when he died? Any files, any documents, any storage devices, anything that he said to keep safe? I tried to think back to 6 years ago, to those horrible weeks after Dad died suddenly and we'd had to go through his things. He left me his watch. Some photos. I think there were some boxes of his personal effects from work that they sent to us, but my mom dealt with most of that. I was in college and I couldn't really face going through his stuff. Where's your mother now? She lives in Florida. Remarried a couple years ago. We talk maybe once a month. We're going to need to contact her. We need to know exactly what was in those boxes from your father's workplace. Can you call her now? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed my mom's number. She answered on the third ring, sounding cheerful and completely unaware that her son's life had just become a nightmare. Jake. Honey. This is a surprise. It's not Mother's Day, is it? No, Mom, it's not. Mom, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember when Dad died, they sent some boxes from his work? Oh, yes, of course. Why? What happened to those boxes? Do you still have them? No, sweetie. I gave most of that stuff to you. You took them with you when you moved to Chicago. Don't you remember? You said you wanted to have something of your father's, something from his professional life. The room went completely silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom, are you sure? I don't remember that. Well, you were pretty upset at the time. Maybe you blocked it out. But yes, there were 3 boxes. You took them all. Said you'd go through them when you were ready. I thanked her, made up some excuse about why I was asking, promised to call her soon, and hung up. 3 sets of eyes were staring at me now. Agent Webb, Detective Morrison, and the young officer who delivered the news about the phone trace, who was still standing in the doorway. I don't remember taking any boxes, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I don't remember having anything from my dad's work. Where do you keep your storage? Agent Webb asked urgently. Do you have a storage unit? A basement? An attic? I have a storage locker in my apartment building. In the basement. I barely ever go down there. I just throw stuff I don't use into it and forget about it. They were on their feet immediately. We need to go to your apartment right now. We need to access that storage locker. We drove back to my building in a convoy of vehicles. The patrol car I'd come in, an unmarked sedan with Agent Webb and 2 other FBI agents, and what looked like a specialized van that I assumed was for handling potentially dangerous materials. My neighbors were going to love this. Mrs. Chen from apartment 2B was already nosy enough without a federal motorcade showing up at our building. The building super, a grumpy man named Frank who I'd maybe spoken to 3 times in 2 years, was summoned to let us into the basement storage area. He kept asking questions about what was going on, whether the building was in danger, whether he needed to evacuate everyone, and Agent Webb kept giving him non-answers that only made him more agitated. My storage locker was number 47, tucked in a corner of the dusty basement behind a bunch of other lockers that were probably full of the same kind of forgotten junk as mine. I unlocked it, and we all stared at the contents. Christmas decorations that I'd used exactly once before deciding they were too much effort. Some old textbooks from college that I'd been too sentimental to sell. A box of cables and old electronics that I kept meaning to donate. Some kitchen appliances I'd bought with good intentions and never actually used. And in the very back, covered in dust, 3 cardboard boxes with Thomas Coleman, Meridian DS, written on the sides in faded marker. Agent Webb pulled on gloves and carefully extracted the first box, setting it on the floor of the hallway. He opened it slowly, methodically, examining each item. Files full of technical documents that meant nothing to me, schematics and specifications and reports full of terminology I didn't understand. Some awards and certificates. A coffee mug that said, World's Okayest Engineer. A framed photo of our family from maybe 15 years ago, my dad looking happy and healthy and alive. The second box was more of the same. Work documents, personal effects, nothing that seemed particularly relevant or important. Agent Webb was getting more tense with each item he examined, and I could tell he was expecting to find something significant, something that would explain everything, and so far there was nothing. The third box was heavier. Agent Webb lifted it carefully and set it down, and even through the cardboard I could see this one was different. The others had been loose, just stuffed with random items. This one was packed carefully, deliberately. He cut the tape and opened the flaps, and we all leaned in to see what was inside. Notebooks. Dozens of notebooks, all in my father's handwriting, filling every page with dense text and diagrams and equations. Agent Webb pulled one out and started flipping through it, his expression growing more grave with each page. "Oh God," he muttered. "Oh God, Tom, what did you do?" "What is it?" I asked, trying to see over his shoulder. "What's in there?" He closed the notebook and looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. "Mr. Coleman, your father was working on the project that device came from. These notebooks contain his research notes, his theories, his calculations. Information that was supposed to be destroyed when he left the company. Information that should not exist outside of classified facilities." My legs felt weak. "But he's been dead for 6 years. How is that relevant now?" Detective Morrison was already on her phone, calling someone, speaking urgently. Agent Webb kept looking through the notebooks, and with each one he examined, he looked more worried. Finally he stood up and faced me directly. "Mr. Coleman, I don't think you were chosen randomly. I think someone knew your father worked on this project. I think they knew he had kept his research notes. And I think they planted that device on you to draw attention to you, to make us search your life, to make us find these notebooks." "But why? Why go through all that? Why not just steal the notebooks?" "Because they didn't know where they were. Your father died suddenly. These notebooks disappeared before the company realized he had them. They've been looking for them for years. But they couldn't search every random storage locker in Chicago without cause. They needed a reason for law enforcement to investigate you thoroughly. So they planted classified technology on you, knowing you'd report it, knowing we'd dig into your background, knowing we'd eventually find the connection to your father and track down his missing research. The hallway seemed to be spinning. So I was bait. This whole thing was just to get you to find these notebooks." "Not just that. Think about it. Once we found these, once we brought them into evidence, they'd be processed, catalogued, stored in a government facility. Secure, but accessible to people with the right credentials. Much easier to steal from evidence than from a random storage unit that nobody knows about." Agent Webb pulled out his phone. "We need to lock this building down. Nobody in or out. If I'm right, if this was really their plan, they're going to make a move soon." As if on cue, the lights went out. The basement went completely dark except for the beams from the flashlights that several of the officers immediately pulled out. Someone was shouting orders. I heard footsteps running, heavy boots on concrete floors. Frank the super was yelling about circuit breakers and fuse boxes. And through it all, I just stood there in the darkness, thinking about my dad, about how he'd kept these notebooks for years, had given them to me without telling me what they were, had died with secrets I'd never known he was keeping. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs casting everything in an eerie glow. Agent Webb grabbed my arm. "Stay close to me. Don't move unless I tell you to move." We could hear sounds from above us, coming from the main floor of the building. Crashes. Shouting. More footsteps. The officers who'd been with us in the basement were now running toward the stairs, weapons drawn, moving with practiced efficiency into what was clearly a dangerous situation. "They're here," Agent Webb said grimly. "They came for the notebooks. How did they even know we found them? They've probably been watching your building. Saw the convoy arrive, saw us go to the basement, figured out we'd found what they were looking for." He pulled out his own weapon, keeping himself between me and the stairs. "Listen to me very carefully, Jake. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, you need to stay alive. You're the only person who can testify about how that device ended up in your possession. You're a witness to a crime that involves stolen government technology. They will try to eliminate you if they get the chance. That word again. Eliminate. Such a clinical way to say murder. More sounds from upstairs. Gunshots. Someone screaming. Agent Webb was talking into his radio, coordinating with officers, calling for backup. Detective Morrison was grabbing the boxes of notebooks, securing them behind some storage lockers where they'd be harder to reach. And I was just standing there, completely useless, completely out of my depth, wishing desperately that I'd never opened my bag yesterday morning, never found that device, never started this chain of events that had led to armed intruders in my building and my neighbor's lives in danger. Basement secured, someone shouted from the stairway. Subjects in custody. Agent Webb didn't lower his weapon. How many? 3. 2 more fled the scene. Units in pursuit. Slowly, carefully, we made our way upstairs. The lobby of my building looked like a war zone. Furniture overturned. Glass from the front door shattered across the floor. 3 people in black tactical gear were face down on the ground with officers kneeling on them, hands being zip-tied behind their backs. One of them was bleeding from somewhere, leaving a trail of red across the floor. Mrs. Chen from 2B was standing in her doorway in her bathrobe, eyes wide with shock. Other neighbors were peeking out from behind their doors, phones out, probably filming everything. Frank was yelling about damages and repairs and insurance. And I just stood there watching it all, this surreal scene playing out in the building where I'd lived quietly and uneventfully for 2 years. One of the intruders, a woman with short dark hair and cold eyes, turned her head and Luke Dieckhoff is pointless, and humming some pop song under her breath. She glanced at my desk, at the mysterious device sitting there, and did a little double-take. Whoa, Jake, is that the new phone? Looks pretty sleek. Very minimalist design. I opened my mouth to respond, but what came out was this weird strangled sound that was half laugh, half panic. No, it's not a phone. I actually don't know what it is. She leaned in closer, interested now. Lisa was one of those people who was interested in everything, always asking questions, always curious. Normally, I loved that about her, but right now I really didn't want attention drawn to this thing. Where'd you get it? Looks expensive. Like, expensive. That matte finish is gorgeous. I didn't get it, I said, hearing how weird that sounded out loud. I just found it. In my bag. And I've never seen it before. Lisa's expression shifted from interest to confusion. Wait, what? You found it in your bag? Like, it just appeared there? Yeah, basically. That's weird, Jake. That's really weird. She reached out like she was going to touch it, and I instinctively pulled it away, which made her raise her eyebrows at me. Whoa, okay, possessive much? Sorry, I don't think you should touch it. I don't know what it is. Now she looked concerned. Jake, are you feeling okay? You look kind of pale. And that's when I made a decision. I couldn't just sit here at my desk all day, staring at this thing and spiraling into increasingly paranoid thoughts. I needed to do something. I needed answers. I needed to know what this was and how it had ended up in my possession. And there was really only one place I could think to go for that kind of help. Lisa, I need to leave for a bit. Can you tell Sarah I had an emergency? What kind of emergency? Personal emergency. I'll explain later. I really need to go. She studied my face for a moment, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her I was serious because she nodded slowly. Okay, yeah, go. I'll cover for you. But Jake, whatever's going on, be careful, okay? I grabbed the device, wrapped it carefully in a scarf I kept in my desk drawer for when the office AC got too aggressive, and shoved it back in my bag. Then I grabbed my jacket, slung the bag over my shoulder, and headed for the elevator, ignoring the curious looks from a few other coworkers who probably wondered why I was leaving so early in the day. The walk to the police station took about 20 minutes. I knew where it was because I'd passed it dozens of times on my way to various places around the city. It was one of those older buildings, solid brick with wide steps leading up to heavy doors, the kind of place that was supposed to make you feel safe and protected, but honestly just made me feel nervous because I'd never actually been inside a police station before and all my knowledge of them came from TV shows where things usually went badly. The whole walk there, I kept my hand on my bag, hyper-aware of the device inside it. Every person I passed on the sidewalk became a potential suspect in my paranoid mind. That businessman talking on his phone? Maybe he was the one who planted it. That woman walking her dog? Maybe she was part of some elaborate surveillance operation. The teenager on the skateboard? Maybe he was a criminal mastermind despite looking like he couldn't master making it to class on time. I knew I was being irrational, but knowing you're being irrational doesn't always stop the irrational thoughts from coming. By the time I reached the police station steps, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood at the bottom of those steps for what felt like an eternity but was probably only about 30 seconds, trying to gather my courage, trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say. "Hi, I'm Jake, and I found something weird. Hi, I need to report a mysterious object. Hi, I think someone is trying to mess with me in a very strange and specific way." Finally, I took a deep breath, climbed the steps, and pulled open one of those heavy doors. The inside of the police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights that were somehow both too bright and too dim at the same time, linoleum floors that had seen better decades, a waiting area with plastic chairs that looked deeply uncomfortable, and a front desk with bulletproof glass separating the officers from the public. The whole place smelled like coffee, cleaning products, and stress. There were a few other people waiting in the chairs, including a woman who was crying quietly into a tissue and a man who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Behind the glass, a female officer with her hair pulled back in a severe bun was typing something on a computer, and a male officer was talking on the phone, his voice a low murmur I couldn't quite make out. I approached the desk, and the female officer looked up at me with that expression that was simultaneously friendly and completely devoid of patience. The expression that said, "I've been doing this job for way too long and I've seen everything, so whatever you're about to tell me better be good. Can I help you?" Her voice matched her expression, professional but tired. "Yes, hi, I paused, suddenly very aware of how insane I was about to sound. "I found something in my bag, and I don't know what it is, and I've never seen it before, and I think someone put it there without my knowledge, and I'm really concerned about what it might be." She stopped typing and gave me her full attention now, her eyes sharpening with interest. "You found something in your bag that you didn't put there?" "Yes, exactly." "What kind of something?" "That's the thing. I don't know. It's like a device of some kind, but I've never seen anything like it before." "Is it currently in your possession?" "Yes, it's in my bag right now." Her hand moved slightly toward something under the desk, and I realized with a jolt of anxiety that she was probably near some kind of panic button or alert system. "Sir, I need you to very carefully, very slowly, place your bag on the counter." The way she said it, the sudden tension in her voice, made me realize just how serious this was becoming. This wasn't just me being paranoid. This was potentially dangerous. I did as she asked, moving slowly and deliberately, placing my black backpack on the counter between us. She looked at it like it might explode, and honestly, I had the same thought. "The device is inside the bag?" "Yes, wrapped in a scarf, near the bottom." The male officer had ended his phone call and was now standing next to her, both of them staring at my bag with expressions I couldn't quite read. The female officer spoke again, her voice very calm, very controlled. "I need you to step back from the counter, sir. About 10 feet back." I did as she asked, and that's when I noticed that everyone in the waiting area was watching now. The crying woman had stopped crying and was staring at me. The man who'd looked uncomfortable now looked terrified. And I realized with a sinking feeling in my stomach that whatever was about to happen, it was going to be a big deal. The male officer disappeared into the back, and a moment later, 2 more officers emerged. These ones were wearing more tactical gear, and one of them was carrying what looked like a heavy-duty scanner of some kind. They all gathered around my bag, speaking to each other in low voices, and I stood there feeling incredibly exposed and increasingly certain that I'd made a huge mistake by coming here. Then one of them very carefully, using what looked like specialized tools, opened my bag. The tactical officer with the scanner ran it over the contents, and I watched the small screen on his device, trying to see if there were any readings or indications of what might be inside. But from where I was standing, I couldn't make out any details. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes, one of them reached in and pulled out the scarf-wrapped bundle. They unwrapped it slowly, revealing the black device, and the moment they saw it, The very second that smooth, dark surface was visible, everything changed. The first officer to see it clearly let out a sound that was half gasp, half shout. "Holy!" He cut himself off, but the alarm in his voice was unmistakable. The female officer from the front desk stood up so fast her chair rolled backward and hit the wall. The tactical officer with the scanner started backing away, his face going pale. And the other officer, the one who'd been standing closest, actually stumbled backward like he'd been physically pushed. "Everyone out!" The tactical officer was suddenly yelling, not at me specifically but at everyone in the waiting area. "Everyone out now! Move, move, move!" The waiting area erupted into chaos. The crying woman started screaming. The uncomfortable man bolted for the door so fast he nearly knocked over a trash can. Other people I hadn't even noticed emerged from hallways and offices. All of them running toward the exits. Officers were pouring in from somewhere deeper in the building, more tactical gear, more serious faces, more urgency. I stood frozen, not understanding what was happening, not understanding why the simple act of showing them this device had created such pandemonium. An officer grabbed my arm, not roughly, but firmly, and started pulling me toward the door. "You need to leave, sir. Right now." "Wait, what's going on? What is it? What is that thing?" "Sir, I need you to exit the building immediately. Someone will speak with you outside." "But my bag." "Leave it. Go. Now." I found myself being hustled out the door along with everyone else, and suddenly we were all standing on the sidewalk in front of the police station, a crowd of confused and frightened people watching as more officers arrived, as police cars pulled up with lights flashing, as the entire building seemed to go into lockdown mode. A young officer, probably not much older than me, approached the group of people who'd been evacuated. "Is anyone here injured? Does anyone need medical attention?" Everyone shook their heads, too shocked to speak. The crying woman was crying again, harder now. The uncomfortable man was on his phone, probably calling someone to tell them what happened. The officer's eyes landed on me. "Are you the one who brought in the item?" I nodded, my mouth suddenly very dry. "Yes, that was me. I'm Jake. I found it in my bag and I didn't know what it was, so I brought it here, and now everyone's freaking out and I really need someone to tell me what's going on." He studied me for a moment, maybe trying to determine if I was a threat or just an idiot who'd gotten caught up in something I didn't understand. Apparently, he decided on the latter because his expression softened slightly. "Where did you find it exactly?" "In my bag. My backpack. I was at work this morning and I just found it. At the bottom. I've never seen it before." "And you have no idea how it got there?" "None. That's why I brought it here. I thought maybe it was a tracking device or something illegal, and I wanted to report it." He pulled out a notepad. "I need your full name, address, phone number, and place of employment." I gave him all that information, my voice shaking slightly, very aware that more police were arriving, that barriers were being set up, that the situation was escalating in ways I couldn't comprehend. Behind us, I could see people gathering, curious onlookers with their phones out, probably filming, probably already posting to social media about whatever was happening at the police station. More questions came. Where had I been in the past 48 hours? Who had access to my bag? Had I noticed anyone following me? Had anyone approached me recently with unusual questions? Had I been out of the country in the past 6 months? Did I work with any sensitive materials or classified information? Had I recently been in contact with anyone associated with any foreign governments or organizations? The questions were making my head spin, and with each one, I felt more and more like I was in some kind of spy movie, except I was the clueless civilian who'd accidentally stumbled into an international incident. "I'm a graphic designer," I kept saying, like that would somehow explain that I was nobody important, nobody who should be caught up in whatever this was. "I design logos and marketing materials. I have a cat. I'm completely ordinary." But they kept asking questions, kept writing down my answers, and I kept glancing back at the police station, at the growing number of official vehicles, at what looked like it might be a bomb squad van pulling up. A bomb squad. For something I'd been carrying around in my bag. Something I'd touched with my bare hands. Something I'd had pressed against my back for who knows how long. That thought made me feel suddenly sick, and I must have looked sick too because the young officer asked again if I needed medical attention. I shook my head, but honestly, I wasn't sure. Was I contaminated with something? Had I been exposed to radiation or chemicals or some kind of biological agent? Was I going to die from whatever that device was? Am I in danger? I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. Should I be worried? Was it dangerous? The officer's face remained carefully neutral, which somehow made it worse. We're taking all necessary precautions. A detective will need to speak with you. Can you remain here? What was I going to say? No? I'm leaving. I had nowhere to go. My bag was inside the police station being examined by what I assumed were experts in things I couldn't even imagine, and I was pretty sure I was either a witness or a suspect or maybe both in whatever was happening. So I waited, and waited, and waited some more. The crowd of onlookers grew larger. News vans started arriving, which was just perfect, exactly what I needed, my face probably about to be plastered all over the evening news as either a victim or a perpetrator of something I didn't understand. The crying woman had been taken away by someone, maybe a friend or family member she'd called. The uncomfortable man was still there, also waiting, also probably being questioned as a witness. About an hour later, a woman in a dark suit approached me. She had short gray hair, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of presence that made you immediately want to sit up straighter and stop whatever you were doing wrong. She showed me a badge that identified her as Detective Sarah Morrison. Mr. Jake Coleman. She said my full name like she'd already run a complete background check on me, which she probably had. That's me. Yes. Hi. Can you please tell me what's happening? Everyone's been asking me questions, but nobody's telling me anything, and I'm kind of freaking out here. She gestured to a bench a little way away from the crowd. Let's sit down and talk. We sat, and she pulled out her own notepad, flipping through pages that already had notes on them. You found the device in your backpack this morning at approximately 10:30 a.m. Is that correct? Yes. And you immediately came to the police station? Well, not immediately. I spent some time trying to figure out what it was first. Looking at it. But yeah, I came here maybe 30 minutes after finding it. During that 30 minutes, did you show it to anyone? Did anyone else handle it? No. Well, my coworker saw it, but she didn't touch it. I wouldn't let her. Why not? Because I didn't know what it was. It seemed like something I shouldn't let other people touch. She made a note of that. That was smart. Very smart, actually. She looked up at me, and her expression was hard to read. Mr. Coleman, I need to ask you some very serious questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you understand? My heart started racing again. Yes. I'll tell you whatever you need to know. I promise I don't know anything about that device. I've never seen it before today. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to harm you or get you in trouble? What? No. I mean, I don't think so. I'm not important enough to have enemies. Ex-girlfriends? Ex-boyfriends? Former friends? Co-workers you've had conflicts with? I thought about it, really thought about it. I had a girlfriend who broke up with me about 6 months ago, but it was amicable. We just weren't compatible. I haven't talked to her since then, but there was no animosity. I get along fine with my co-workers. I don't have any big conflicts with anyone that I can think of. What about online? Any heated arguments on social media? Anyone who might have taken offense to something you posted? I barely use social media. I post pictures of my cat sometimes. That's about it. She studied me for a long moment, and I got the feeling she was trying to determine whether I was telling the truth or if I was some kind of elaborate liar who was really good at playing innocent. The device you found, she said slowly, is something we need to take very seriously. I can't tell you all the details right now, but what I can tell you is that it shouldn't exist in civilian hands. It's not commercially available. It's not something you can buy in a store or online. It's not something that should be anywhere near an ordinary citizen. My stomach dropped. What is it? Is it a bomb? Is it radioactive? Am I contaminated? It's not a bomb, and as far as we can tell right now, it's not radioactive. But it is something that poses significant concerns, which is why we reacted the way we did. We're going to need to keep investigating this. We'll need to examine your apartment, your workplace, your computer, your phone. We need to figure out who put this in your possession and why. You mean I'm a suspect? Right now, you're a person of interest. That's not the same as being a suspect, but it does mean we need to be thorough. We need to clear you before we can move forward with other lines of investigation. I felt like I might throw up. I didn't do anything. I swear. I found this thing and I brought it here because I thought that was the right thing to do. If I'd known it was going to cause all this, I trailed off, because what would I have done differently? Thrown it away? Ignored it? That seemed worse somehow. You did do the right thing, Detective Morrison said, and her voice was kinder now. If you'd tried to dispose of it or kept it hidden, things would be much worse right now. The fact that you brought it in immediately suggests you're not involved in whatever is going on. But we still need to investigate. Do you understand? I nodded, feeling numb. What do I do now? Now you go home. We'll have officers posted outside your building for your protection and to make sure nobody tries to approach you or access your apartment. We'll need you to come in tomorrow morning for a more detailed interview. Bring a lawyer if you want, though if you're truthful and cooperative, you shouldn't need one. Don't leave the city without notifying us. Don't talk to the media. Don't post about this on social media. Don't discuss it with anyone except your lawyer if you choose to get one. Can you do that? Yes, I can do that. She handed me a card with her contact information. If you remember anything, no matter how small or insignificant it seems, call me immediately. If anyone approaches you asking about the device or about what happened today, call me immediately. If anything unusual happens at all, call me immediately. Understood.